The committee will come to order. Pursuant to notice, we meet today to mark up H.R. 3583, the Malala Yousafzai Scholarship Act. Without objection, all members may have 5 days to submit statements for the record and to put any extraneous materials on this bill in for the record. And I now call up the bill, H.R. 3583. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 3583 to expand the number of scholarships available to Pakistani women under the Merit and Needs-Based Scholarship Program.
Without objection, the bill is considered read. To help expedite our consideration, I'm going to go ahead and call up the bipartisan amendments previously sent to your offices, and before we proceed to the opening statements, so that members may speak once on the entire package. So I ask unanimous consent that the following amendments, which members have before them, be considered en bloc. The bipartisan amendment number 42, in the nature of a substitute, offered by Ms. Ross-Lehtinen, the author of this bill, and the Connolly amendment number 100. Without objection, so ordered. I now recognize myself to speak on these items. We just heard today how even a modest investment in educating women and girls in the developing world, and in areas beset by poverty and radicalism in particular, can pay long-term dividends that help stabilize societies, that promote market-based economic growth, that advance U.S. national security objectives. And that is why H.R. 3583 is so important. I want to thank Chairman Emeritus Ross-Lehtinen for her leadership on this issue. I have myself, for years, traveled to South Asia and expressed concern about the appalling state of education in places like Afghanistan and Pakistan, and the subsequent rise, particularly of these Deobandi madrasas, that prey upon the disenfranchised, that breed radicalism, and that have been so difficult to get closed. There are 600 of them in particular that are churning out a new graduating class every year that is destabilizing the region and a threat, frankly, to the hopes and aspirations of the people in Pakistan and Afghanistan. The situation for women in areas where access to education is actively suppressed is particularly grim. In Pakistan's northwest frontier province and in Baluchistan, for example, literacy among women is between just 3 and 8%. I myself had the opportunity to tour a very effective school up in the northwest frontier some years ago, but on my following trip back, I'd found that the Taliban had targeted it and destroyed it. It is therefore fitting that the bill before us would be named for the Malala Yousafzai, for her, because at the age of 15 she dared, of course, to defy the Taliban. She was brutally assaulted for her efforts and ultimately inspired a generation of women and girls to demand their fundamental right to be educated. H.R. 3583 requires USAID to award at least half of the scholarships made available through the Merit and Needs-Based Scholarship Program in Pakistan, which the United States supports, to women. It simply provides support and policy guidance. That's the intent of the bill, and I'm particularly pleased that the substitute amendment contains language emphasizing the importance of consulting with and leveraging investments by the private sector and Pakistani diaspora communities in the United States, who themselves put so much of their own hard-earned money in to support education, both at the medical school level and at other institutions of learning across Pakistan. Tapping into this vast pool of expertise and resources will prove invaluable, and I thank the Ranking Member and Subcommittee Chairman Ross-Lehtinen both for working with me to press this point. And I urge members to support the amended bill and recognize the Ranking Member, Mr. Elliott Engel of New York, for his remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I concur with everything that you said. I'm very pleased that we had this important hearing this morning, and I'm very proud of the role that our colleague, Mr. Keating, played first in bringing these hearings and then in participating in them. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership. 600 million women around the world are illiterate, nearly twice the number of men, and in rural Pakistan, only one-third of women can read. These scholarships are so important. It's so important for the United States to put our money where our mouth is in helping women in Pakistan. The overall gender disparity is even more pronounced in higher education. Only 2 countries of 130 measured by the 2013 Millennium Development Goals Report achieved gender parity in the area. And these disparities are very costly for women. They marginalize them politically, reduce their employment opportunities, and increase their vulnerability. President Obama has said that if a country is educating its girls, if women have equal rights, that country is going to move forward. But if women are oppressed and abused and illiterate, they're going to fall behind. And studies show that he's correct. So every year of primary school boosts a girl's future wages by 10 to 20%, and every year of secondary school increases that increase earning potential by 15 to 25%. The World Bank's top economist has said that financing women's education yields the highest rate of return of any investment in the developing world. These facts alone justify the efforts of the U.S. to promote female education worldwide. A recent IMF study also found that if females were working in the same proportion as men, we would see a 34% increase in the gross domestic product of Egypt, 27% in India, 9% in Japan, and even a 5% increase in the United States. And there's another compelling reason for the U.S. to support female education around the world. Educated women and girls are proving to be some of the most powerful weapons in the fight against violent extremism. The Taliban, we all know the story, exposed their fear of educated girls when they tried to silence Malala Yousafzai. Malala's incredible example is a reminder that females are ready to lead all over the world when they have the opportunity to go to school. When girls and women are educated, they're better able to combat extremism in their roles as mothers, community members, teachers, and activists. And simply put, the battle for hearts and minds cannot be won without the participation of educated women and girls. That's why this bill that we're marking up today is so important. It is clear that there are numerous tangible benefits to educating women and girls, but we must also remember that the right to an education is a basic fundamental human right enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And yet too many young girls are still stuck working at home during the school day. Too many are still being forced out of school and into early marriages. So we must ensure that promoting education for girls and women abroad remains a priority for the U.S. As remarkable young women like Malala have demonstrated, when education empowers women to shape their own destinies, extremism is doomed. So I am delighted to support this legislation and support the amendments that are also being brought forth to perfect this legislation. And I'm glad once again that we are doing so in a bipartisan way. And I thank Chairman Royce and everyone who has worked so hard to bring this legislation and make it a reality. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. And we want to thank the ranking member for his work on this legislation and amendments into the bill. Do any other members seek recognition to speak on the pending items?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Ross-Layton, and then we'll go to Mr. Connolly and then to Mr. Cicilline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so very much for holding this markup on this important issue. H.R. 3583 is a bipartisan measure and the House companion of Senate Bill 120, sponsored by Senator Boxer. This bill will mandate that USAID award at least 50% of scholarships to women in Pakistan under the Merit and Needs-Based Scholarship Program for from 2014 to 2016. Sure. I would also like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, as well as my good friend, Mr. Engel, for making the bill stronger, for making the bill more efficient. And I also would like to offer my support to the amendment offered by my good friend, and I hear that he was a former Senate staffer. I'm not sure if that's true. Mr. Connolly from Virginia, requiring USAID to look at the number of women participants who have dropped out of the program due to retaliation. This issue is very near and dear to my heart as one of the few women on this committee and someone with a background in education. Having been a Florida certified teacher, I know firsthand the importance of education for our youth. We've seen that greater access to education for women leads to increased respect for human rights, a rise in prosperity and well-being, and a more peaceful and stable society. Stories like those of Malala, who defied the brutal Taliban and became an inspiration for young people worldwide. Education is the most important factor in empowering young girls to become successful members of society and protecting them from the ignorance that enables abuse and radicalization. Thank you so very much, Mr. Chairman, for this markup. Thank you, Mr. Engel, as well. Thank you, sirs.
Thank you, Ms. Ross-Layton, and I think Mr. Connolly wishes to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you and the ranking member for your leadership in this issue and for the hearing we just had, a very thoughtful hearing. I also want to thank my good friend Ileana Ross-Layton for her leadership in this issue and her commitment. And I am particularly impressed with her perspicacity, Mr. Chairman, that she actually knows my background, that I was once a very important person. I was a staff member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. I do want to seriously thank all involved in this bill. I think it's really important. And as we just heard in this hearing, education is transformative. It is the key to changing the status of women. It is the key to providing opportunity. And we need to be all in when it comes to education. So I thank my friend for accepting a slight modification in the reporting requirement to capture data about women who have been forced out of education because of retaliation. And I enthusiastically support the bill in front of us. And again, I thank the Chair and Ranking Member for their leadership. I yield back.
Mr. Cicilline, you were seeking time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to begin by thanking you and Ranking Member Engel for convening a markup on this important issue and for the hearing we just had and for continuing to highlight the pressing issues of educational access, opportunity, and equality. I also want to thank Congresswoman Ross-Layton, our Chair Emeritus, for sponsoring the legislation that we are considering today, and also thank and acknowledge the work of my colleague, Congressman Keating, for his work on this issue. Every child deserves the opportunity to obtain a quality education in the best environment possible and to be given the opportunity to achieve their full potential. As we work in the United States to help provide support for qualified teachers, better technology in the classrooms, safe school literacy programs, and greater community engagement, we must not forget that we belong to a global economy. Educated children and young people will help drive the future of our economy and the future of our world. Unfortunately, as we know, girls and women are too often left behind. And although we're making progress here in closing the achievement gap in the United States, girls and women in many parts of the world still face significant barriers to education. In particular, today we honor Malala, who faced threats from the Taliban and ultimately a nearly deadly attack in her relentless pursuit of an education. We must do everything we can to increase opportunities available to women and girls, especially in countries that are struggling to achieve peace and democracy. Undoubtedly, these countries will benefit from their civic involvement, and so will the world. And so I thank everyone who has worked so hard on this, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Cicilline. Does Ms. Frankel have an additional second-degree amendment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there's an amendment.
All right.
I'm sorry.
There is, and the clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3583 offered by Ms. Frankel of Florida. At the proper place in the bill, insert, quote, it is the sense of Congress that recipients of these scholarships commit to improving their local communities, end quote.
And the Chair recognizes the author for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I probably would have liked to do something stronger, but I think this will get the point across. We heard from our very distinguished, articulate panel this morning that it was their, I think for each of them, it was their opinion that these scholarships could be more effective if the recipients would pay it forward to their communities with service and mentoring. And I think today, where our resources are so much in demand and so important and so scarce, that we have the most effective use of them. So I offer this amendment, and I hope that perhaps at a later date, in a bipartisan manner, we can follow up with USAID, maybe with a letter, some conversations on how they could implement this.
I think that sounds very appropriate. Do any other members seek recognition to speak on the amendment? Hearing no further requests for recognition, the question occurs on the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to.
Mr. Chair, may I speak on behalf of the bill?
Overall underlying bill?
Yes.
Very briefly?
Yes.
All right. Then the gentlelady is granted time.
I'll be very brief just to say thank you. I want to thank you, the ranking member, of course, Ms. Ross-Lehtinen, who I work very closely with, one of our great leaders from Florida. And I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of this legislation. And just as it's been repeated, again, this legislation is named after a young lady who is inspiring to all of us. And I hope that these scholarships will bring us many more Malalas into society. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well put, Ms. Rangel. Okay. Are there any other members besides Ms. Frankel that want to speak on this amendment? Hearing no further requests for recognition, the question occurs on the en bloc amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it, and the en bloc amendments, Ross-Lehtinen 42 and Connolly 100, and the Frankel amendment are agreed to. The question now occurs on agreeing to House H.R. 3583 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it, and the bill as amended is agreed to, and without objection, 3583 as amended is ordered favorably reported as a single amendment in the nature of a substitute. Staff is directed to make any technical and conforming changes. And members, that concludes our business for today, and I want to thank Ranking Member Engel and all of our committee members for their contributions and assistance to this legislation. The committee is adjourned.